Hi, good morning everyone, and welcome to our Finding Life Balance webinar. Thanks for joining us. This is the fourth and final webinar in our Maintaining Mental Health in Times of Uncertainty webinar. Before we get started, I do want to let you know that you don't need to have the video portion of your connection enabled. Really just the audio is fine. And that, again, as you probably just heard, this webinar is being recorded, and so just so you're aware of that. And we've enacted a universal mute just for sound quality, so there'll be time if there's questions at the end that you can be unmuted and ask questions at that time. But there's also a chat box feature, so if you'd like to, you can just use the chat box, type in your question, and we'll get those answered as well. So I think I'll hand it over to our presenter, Katrina, and we'll get ready and get going.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Marissa. So for those of you who haven't met me yet, as Marissa shared, my name is Katrina Luco, and I'm the training specialist here at Donate Life Northwest. I work primarily in Erase the Weight, which is our Living Kidney Mentorship Program. However, my academic background is rooted in psychology as well as professional mental health, so that makes me particularly passionate about bringing you this webinar series that we have been presenting. So we do have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in by taking a look at today's learning objectives. So in today's webinar, we will clearly define the concept of life balance. We'll explore the connection between life balance and overall well-being. We'll identify and examine the individual components of life balance, gain some tools to help us assess our current level of life balance, and we'll also create a detailed action plan to begin our journey towards living a more balanced life. So we'll begin by discussing the heightened importance of finding life balance within the specific context of the current COVID-19 pandemic. So why is finding life balance important during this current health crisis? In the first webinar in this series, I explained how the COVID-19 outbreak encompasses three of the primary triggers for stress, worry, and anxiety, being that the situation is ambiguous and open to different interpretations. It's novel and new. We don't have a prior similar experience to reference. And it's also unpredictable. It's unclear how things will turn out. So you can see how all three of those components are really going to contribute to just emotional, mental distress, or at least discomfort. So while maintaining life balance is always an essential element of overall happiness and well-being, it becomes imperative during times of heightened stress, worry, and/or anxiety like we are all collectively experiencing now. Unclear, unprecedented, and unpredictable situations such as the current health crisis often knock our life off kilter. Many changes have been imposed upon us, and our daily activities and routines can no longer be maintained. Naturally, this can be rather unsettling, and we can find that the things that we usually did to look after our well-being have become difficult. As I will soon discuss, this imbalance of pleasure, achievement, and closeness can negatively affect our mood, relationships, health, and overall well-being. So now that we know a bit about why finding life balance is more important than ever, let's take a look at exactly what life balance is all about. So in this next section, before we learn how to go about creating life balance for ourselves, we'll make sure that we have a clear understanding of exactly what life balance is. The term life balance is representative of a healthy, meaningful lifestyle in which adequate time is given to activities that support one's personal needs and values. Achieving balance allows us to reach our goals and our purpose in life while creating a less stressful path. While interrelated and complementary to one another, the concept of life balance surpasses the often referenced idea of work-life balance. Work-life balance largely focuses on maintaining boundaries between work and home life, whereas life balance takes a larger, more holistic approach, urging us to seek a harmonious blend of occupational, familial, social, and leisure pursuits. Balanced living means considering all aspects of your life. Self-help author Annis Lemmer emphasizes that a balanced life is one in which your needs in all areas of life are being met during both good times and challenging times. She notes, it's the direct result of making educated choices and staying focused. Having a balanced life is a daily choice. I also appreciate the definition of life balance provided by psychotherapist Jasmine Taniloff. She explains, life balance means that you have a handle on the various elements in your life and don't feel that your heart or mind are being pulled too hard in any direction. More often than not, you feel calm, grounded, clear-headed, and motivated. Sounds pretty nice to me. So, what are some of the additional benefits of life balance? Likely unsurprisingly, research demonstrates that finding and maintaining life balance are essential components to overall well-being, particularly life satisfaction, physical health, life purpose, and fulfillment of basic psychological needs. Perhaps one of the largest benefits of life balance is a significant reduction in stress. Because stress, especially chronic stress, negatively impacts us in a variety of ways, the lower stress levels observed in individuals who live a balanced life result in striking gains, including increased productivity, improved concentration, less irritability, happier mood, more positive outlook, better relationships, stronger physical health, higher levels of creativity, and more energy. When we lack balance in our lives, it is common for some aspects of our life to draw a disproportionate amount of energy, in turn shortchanging other important areas of our life. This imbalance throws us off, making it challenging to move forward and promoting guilt, shame, avoidance, anxiety, and negative self-talk. Being mindful of life balance allows us to avoid this pitfall by giving attention to all of the most important areas of our lives so that none are being shortchanged. A balanced lifestyle also allows us to live in closer alignment with our personal core values. That is, living in a manner that consistently supports the things that are most important to us. Living in alignment with our personal core values strengthens our sense of purpose and meaning. We spend more time doing things that matter, and those things make us feel good, worthy, useful, and proud. The good feelings that arise as a result of supporting our personal values can also be described as experiencing intrinsic rewards. Intrinsic rewards are internal in nature and come from cultivating a sense of achievement through one's own actions and efforts. They are psychological rewards experienced through positive emotional reactions. Because the experience of intrinsic rewards is pleasant, we naturally crave more. This desire turns into intrinsic motivation, which assists us in accomplishing tasks and achieving goals much more efficiently than motivation associated with external sources. Maintaining life balance also increases our sense of connection. When we're leading an imbalanced life, socializing often gets pushed to the back burner, leaving us feeling isolated and disconnected. A balanced life includes time spent with engaging with friends, family, and community, hence bolstering our overall sense of connection and belongingness. So what are some of the specific components of a balanced life? We've touched on them a little bit in just going into the definition, but let's take a look at them more in depth. The aspects of life that need to be actively tended to in order to achieve a sense of balance will differ for each of us. However, there are general facets or areas of life we typically need to be mindful of in order to achieve an overall sense of well-being and life satisfaction. So let's take a look at each one. The first area is physical. This means respecting and caring for our bodies by consuming a healthy and balanced diet of natural foods, drinking plenty of water, moving our bodies through exercise and stretching, maintaining a consistent sleep-wake cycle, and practicing controlled breathing. The large-scale goal of a focus in this facet of life is overall fitness. The second area is mental. This involves consistently learning about ourselves and making discoveries about the world around us by maintaining curiosity, seeking out new knowledge, reading, writing, and studying, asking questions and hypothesizing, and developing new ideas and creating. The large-scale goal in this facet of life is increasing wisdom. The next facet of life is emotional. Tending to this aspect involves fostering acceptance of self and finding meaning in our life experiences by practicing self-compassion, honestly expressing emotions, using life challenges as catalysts for self-growth, engaging with gratitude, and cultivating a positive outlook. The large-scale goal in this area of life is contentment. Next up is the area of social life. Nurturing this facet of life means acknowledging the inherent social nature of human beings and celebrating the gifts of communication and companionship by actively engaging with friends, family, and community, authentically listening and practicing empathy, being open and truthful within relationships, teaching, sharing, and helping, and sharpening our communication skills. The large-scale goal in this area of life is unity. The next area of life to consider is financial. Bolstering balance in this part of life requires appreciating money as simply a primary means of obtaining material needs and wants by saving money when possible, being mindful of budgeting and/or cash flow, honoring debts and paying bills on time, respecting the reciprocal relationship between work and money, and exploring your money narrative to better understand your relationship with finances. The large-scale goal in this facet of life is security. The last primary aspect of life that we'll look at is spiritual. This area involves nurturing our soul and spirit and acknowledging a cause, force, or purpose greater than oneself by exploring our personal beliefs, having faith in the unknowable, appreciating life and nature's cycles, learning about spiritual frameworks different from our own, and engaging with meditation, prayer, affirmations, mantras, and so forth. Other areas of life that may play a large enough role in our lives to create an entire spoke of our life wheel are work and career, parenthood, creativity, environment, home, surroundings, and adventure and travel, just to name a few. As I mentioned earlier, those primary domains I reviewed generally tend to play a role in most of our lives. However, as we think about life balance, do not feel as though you're restricted to only considering these areas. Each of our lives is unique and has its own distinctive areas of focus. Additionally, we each have differing values, needs, priorities, and life goals. Therefore, each of us are likely to differ in the domains that we emphasize and the balance that we seek among them. So how do we go about deciding what categories should be featured on our own personal life balance? Well, we need to figure out which areas of life are most meaningful, impactful, and important to us. The best way to accomplish this sizable task is to gain clarity around our core values and personal needs. So what do I mean when I refer to defining our values? Our core values are the things we believe are most important. They are representative of the things we hold most dear and find most essential. Our values reflect the heart of who we are. They can be just about anything, such as family, hard work, travel, spiritual growth, or having a good time. Each of us has a unique set of values, and they are influenced by variables such as our family of origin, culture, age, life experiences, education, spiritual beliefs, and societal norms, just to name a few of the influences. Our core values help to determine our life priorities, and they significantly influence our decision-making processes. It is not uncommon to lose sight of our core values amidst the demands of our busy lives. When we fail to live in accordance with our values, we often feel dissatisfied and off-kilter. Taking the time to explore our values can help illuminate facets of life that are over or under attended to. There are a number of approaches that can be taken to facilitate an exploration of our personal core values. It can be helpful to use a combination of exploration styles to gain as much clarification as possible. Common values exploration tools include list or value card decks, in which you're provided a list of values or a set of cards containing one value each and asked to rank them in order of personal importance. Values exploration worksheets help you think about where your values originated and how they show up in your current life. Values reflection questions can also be helpful. They're designed to prompt deeper level thinking about personal values, and they can be used orally or in written form. In a follow-up email, I will include a few different types of value exploration tools for you to play around with. The other type of understanding it's important to cultivate in order to work toward a balanced life is that of your personal needs. Each of us has a unique set of personal needs. These needs extend beyond basic survival needs such as food and water. Our individual personal needs must be met in order for us to be at our best. They are critical to our ability to thrive and to live a life we love. As important as personal needs are, few of us are aware of them. As a result, we generally go about meeting our needs unconsciously, often in ways that are at odds with living a fulfilling and balanced life. Once we spend time discovering our personal needs and how to meet them with mindful intention, our lives tend to work much better. The process of identifying our personal needs involves reflection and documentation. Here, I'll use the classic psychological concept of Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a starting point and a guide. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a motivational theory in psychology comprising a 5-tier model of human needs, typically depicted as hierarchical levels within a pyramid. The idea is that needs lower down on the pyramid must be satisfied before individuals can attain the needs higher up. Maslow's hierarchy provides a great framework for thinking about our own personal needs. To do so, place Maslow's pyramid next to a blank pyramid and think about your own personal needs in each level of the hierarchy. From the bottom to the top, the needs are physiological, which addresses basic needs such as food, shelter, water, and rest. Safety, which speaks to the psychological needs related to a sense of safety and security in relation to life areas such as health, family, employment, and resources. Love and belonging, which encompasses psychological needs related to family relationships, sexual intimacy, friendship, and connectedness. Esteem, which covers psychological needs related to self-confidence, a sense of accomplishment, self-esteem, being respected by others, and a sense of achievement. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, I guess, is self-actualization, which describes self-fulfillment needs such as achieving one's full potential, engaging in creative pursuits, seeking personal growth, and living in alignment with one's personal values. As you identify your own personal needs in each area, write them in the appropriate section of the blank pyramid. For those of us who respond well to visual learning, it might be helpful to tear up small bits of paper and write each need on its own piece so that the needs can easily be moved around with the pyramid as we brainstorm. After we feel satisfied with our pyramid, we want to move on to refining our needs so that we can focus on the things that are personally most important. In this step, we consider which are needs, in other words, must-haves, versus wants, shoulds, or wishes. In this process, we need to carefully consider those needs that we have a strong aversion to. We may be inclined to write them off as quote-unquote shoulds and remove them from our list of needs. However, it's important to ask ourselves if they could actually be needs that we don't like or don't want to take ownership of. A big clue can be if this aspect of life shows up as part of a negative pattern. This may indicate it is actually an important personal need that's going unmet. For example, a physiological need may be 6 to 8 hours of sleep per night. However, perhaps you find yourself creatively inspired in the nighttime hours, which results in staying up late and getting less sleep. This may lead to a negative pattern of feeling tired, unmotivated, and unable to complete your daily tasks. If you're able to assess this pattern honestly and objectively, it becomes clear that your need for adequate nightly sleep is going unmet, creating a number of detrimental effects. After we finish this filtering process, what should remain is an outline of our personal needs within each area of the life, within each of the areas described on Maslow's hierarchy. The final step in the needs identification process is to pinpoint actions that satisfy the needs we've identified. The idea here is to satisfy our personal needs as automatically as possible at all times so that they do not create barriers to living a balanced life. To generate a list of these actions, we need to do the following. Make a list of activities or actions that will help you meet your personal needs in beneficial ways. Be sure to include the things that you do every day, as well as periodic activities and new things you could do to meet your needs. Make a list of your characteristics, strengths, and behaviors that help you meet your personal needs. Write down ways that other people can help you meet your personal needs. After gaining clarity around our core values and personal needs, we are armed with the information necessary to begin reprioritizing our lives in ways that will support much higher levels of life balance. Next, let's explore how we apply the personal data we've collected so far to begin taking specific steps toward increased life balance. As we've already experienced through the values and needs identification process, looking at ourselves as we really are is the first step in restructuring our lives. This step entails deciding on the ways in which we want to balance our lives by way of honestly assessing the imbalanced aspects of our lives. This is where the information we've gathered about our core values and personal needs plays a large role. We're going to apply this information through an exercise called the Life Wheel. Begin by printing a blank copy of the Life Wheel that will be shared in the follow-up email, or create your own by drawing a large circle on a blank piece of paper. The circle represents your life. If you're drawing your own Life Wheel, you'll need to divide the circle into slices like that of a pizza. These slices or wheel spokes represent the various areas of your life. Next, we want to use the core values and personal needs we've identified to determine the life categories that will be represented by the spokes of our wheel. During this process, it's helpful to also keep the general life categories we discussed earlier in mind: physical, mental, social, financial, spiritual, and so forth. So you can see on the slide there is an example of the life areas that an individual chose. So for this particular person, the areas of life that feel most important are physical health, career, finances, mental and emotional health, relationship and home life, nature, social, and spiritual growth. So those became the categories for each spoke on their life wheel. Once you have filled in your life areas, it's time to plot your current life balance by filling out the wheel. As we settle in to do so, it's necessary to get into a reflective mindset and allow ourselves time to really look at our lives, our state of mind, and how we're feeling. This requires being honest with ourselves and acknowledging the areas of our lives that we're neglecting. As we reflect, we need to make sure to think about the personal values and needs we've identified, which ones are being met by our current lifestyle, and which are falling by the wayside. Within each slice of your wheel, think of the wheel's outer edge as being completely satisfied or ranking as a 10, and the center of the wheel as being totally dissatisfied or ranking at a 0. Give a rating level to your level of satisfaction in each of the life areas that you've listed by drawing a line to indicate the level of satisfaction you have in that particular area of your life. So the wheel on the left is giving you the example of how to go about drawing those lines to indicate your satisfaction on a scale of 1 to 10. After you have your lines filled in, just for the visual wow of it all, I do advise coloring your sections in, particularly if you have access to different colored pens or pencils that you're able to use. It just increases the visual impact of this particular exercise. So once your wheel is completed, it's time to take a step back and review it. What does it look like? Is it round and full? Think of it as being the tires on your car. What would the ride be like? Would it roll along smoothly and effortlessly? Oh boy, I mean, there is a lot of irony in not being able to say that word, because apparently it takes a lot of effort for me. Or would it be rough and bumpy? It's rare to end up with a wheel that would actually roll well. Most of us will discover that our life wheel is rather lopsided or misshapen. You can see that is absolutely the example here in this completed wheel on the screen. By looking at our completed life wheel, we are able to easily see the areas of our life that are lacking proper attention. Upon completion, we need to be honest with ourselves about our reaction to the picture it shows. Ask yourself the following: what are my thoughts and feelings? Are there areas where I want to spend more time? If so, why? Are there fears or discomforts that I'm avoiding or that are keeping me from doing something in any of these areas? If I were able to pay more attention to the lacking areas, how would I start? When would I begin? Thinking about these questions is certainly adequate. It can also be incredibly helpful to do some writing around these reflective questions. So now that we have this information, what do we do about it? Let's look at the steps we need to take to create an action plan for life balance. The first action step is to prioritize. When looking at our wheels, we may find several areas that we feel could use more attention, and it's unlikely we'll have the time to work on all of them at once. Which one is waving its hand wildly and saying, pick me first? Which one is beckoning to you the most? Going with your gut instinct is key here. It's easier and more fun working on the areas you're initially drawn to. To tune into your gut, it can be helpful to ask, what matters most? What will help me make the largest strides towards finding life balance? And then the key is to listen to your first unfiltered internal response versus allowing yourself to mull it over. It's important to note that our priorities may shift somewhat frequently, so in order to stay on course, we may need to re-examine our priorities regularly. We'll revisit this idea toward the end of the webinar. Once we decide on our priorities, we use them to set goals or intentions. When done correctly, goal setting is effective and often critical to success in relation to making sustainable positive life changes. Research demonstrates that goals energize performance, motivate persistence over time, and direct our attention to relevant behaviors and away from behaviors which are irrelevant or detrimental to the achievement of our goals at hand. When we're creating our goals, we need to be mindful of wording so that our goals are coming from a lens of abundance versus deficit. What exactly do I mean here? Well, let's take a look at a single goal worded two different ways. We'll return to our previous example of the intention to maintain a wholesome diet. This goal could be worded negatively along the lines of, I want to stop eating so much junk food. Or it could be presented more positively, such as, I want to feel healthy and will change my diet in order to do so. It's important to reframe negative goals into more positive terms because the initial motivation for negative goals often comes from a harmful place lacking in self-compassion. For example, the thought process might be, I need to stop eating so much junk food because my body is ugly. These negative connotations can lead to self-criticism, self-sabotage, and demotivation. You may already be familiar with the SMART goals approach to goal setting. It's certainly one of the gold standards in terms of goal framework. The things to keep in mind when setting SMART goals are that the goals are specific, meaning that it is direct, detailed, and meaningful. It's important to be specific as possible when setting goals. This can make the difference between knowing what you are aiming for and how you'll get there versus being frustrated in the face of a seemingly insurmountable or open-ended goal. Specificity in goal setting can be achieved by looking at the what, why, where, when, and how of a goal. What do I want to achieve? How will I get there? When will I have achieved this goal? An example of a goal that does not meet this criteria would be, I want to eat more vegetables. An example of a goal that does meet the criteria of specificity would be, I will participate in Meatless Monday every week for the next 3 months. In terms of measurable goals, that just means that the goal is quantifiable to enable tracking of progress and success. Having a goal which can be quantified in some way makes it a lot easier to track your progress. Quantifiable simply means it can be measured, which allows for the continued evaluation of your progress toward achievement. An example of a goal that does not meet this criteria would be, I want to read more often. An example of a goal that is measurable would be, I will actively participate in my book club each month. Also note that observing progress by having a measurable goal tends to support positive emotions as you see yourself moving toward that goal, making progress, taking those small baby steps, which in turn supports positive internal self-talk. The A in SMART goals is often goes back and forth between achievable and attainable, but the gist is that the goal is realistic and the resources that you have that you need to accomplish your goal are accessible. The key question here is the goal actually achievable? For success, the goals we set need to be grounded in reality to avoid setting ourselves up for disappointment. We must acknowledge that finding a balance between the effort required to meet the goal and the challenge posed can be tricky. However, we need to be mindful that the reward gained from meeting our goal must be worth the effort put in. Otherwise, we're just not going to want to do it. Examples of goals that meet this requirement of being achievable or attainable are going to be more situational in nature because sometimes it's going to depend on our personal circumstances, experiences, knowledge, and so forth. For instance, if someone is unfamiliar with the Spanish language, a goal of, I will become fluent in Spanish by the end of the month is likely to be unrealistic, whereas a goal of, I will learn a new Spanish word each day for the next month could perhaps be more attainable. The R is for relevant. The goal is personally meaningful and relevant to larger life intentions. Again, the R sometimes also represents realistic. In my personal view, I think realistic already falls into the attainable, achievable category, and relevant is really an extremely key component of goals that we will actually accomplish, because if they're relevant, they're meaningful. So here we focus more intently on the subjective why are we going after this goal. Some things to consider include, is the goal something you actually want to achieve? Is the goal internally motivated, or does it stem from external pressure? Does the goal resonate and feel meaningful? And will achieving this goal offer intrinsic rewards, an internal sense of satisfaction? In other words, when you finally reach your goal, is it going to be something to relish? Will it have made a positive difference? If so, the answer is yes to most of those things. Your goal is going to fit this criteria of being relevant. The last piece of the SMART goals is that the goal has a deadline. It's time-bound. Deadlines maximize the reward versus time component of achieving a goal. Setting a deadline requires that frantic learning or training to scramble toward a goal, setting a deadline eliminates the frantic learning or training or scrambling we sometimes get into toward working toward a goal, and helps to eliminate stress. It keeps us organized, and it helps the goal be attainable when we've got those deadlines in place. It helps to keep us on track, provides an additional progress gauge, and also just put a framework on things. It is important when you are thinking about setting deadlines that you are realistic in terms of the deadline that you're setting. An unrealistic timeline is going to just increase stress, support negative self-talk and really increase the likelihood that you will throw the goal out the window altogether. So an example of a goal that does not meet the criteria of time-bound is, I will learn how to build birdhouses. A goal that does meet this criteria is, I will complete my first hand-built birdhouse within the next 3 months. Breaking down goals into short and long-term elements is a crucial part of goal setting that is often overlooked. In business, this is called tactics and strategy. Strategy is the long-term goal, the big picture, and tactics are the combination of short-term goals that will help you get to your long-term goal. For example, if your long-term goal is to eat healthier, your short-term goals might be taking a cooking class, identifying 5 websites with healthy recipes, or trying a new fruit and vegetable each week. Make sure that your goals are specific so that you can easily determine when they are complete. You also want to further break down each short-term and long-term goal into smaller tasks. Focusing on one small task at a time makes working toward goals much more manageable and has multiple benefits, including being better organized, knowing where to start, feeling less overwhelmed, having multiple action items to choose from at any given time, and improving motivation through better being able to see and track your progress. Another thing to consider is if you even want to refer to these items as goals in the first place. Many of us have a negative connotation when it comes to the word goals. That's often due to the fact that throughout our life journeys, we have many goals forcefully imposed upon us, whether by parents, teachers, bosses, or partners. An adverse reaction to the term goals may also originate with past experiences of negative emotions, such as guilt, shame, and frustration associated with failure to meet goals. Those aren't things that we want to feel, so if we avoid setting goals, we're not going to feel them. Either way, a simple renaming of the thing we're referring to as quote-unquote goals can be effective. Some alternatives include attentions, aims, objectives, and targets. I also have a friend who just gives her goals human names. So I can ask her, how's Albert doing? And she'll talk to me about her vegetable garden. So now that we have our intentions in place, let's explore how we swing into action and begin working toward a more balanced life. First of all, we need to dedicate time to work on our goals. In order to pay more attention to the areas of our life that need improvement, we have to make time for it. Otherwise, it won't get done, plain and simple. Placing our focus on these less tended to areas of our life will take some getting used to. Change doesn't happen overnight, and it's no different here. So create a plan and stick to it. Positive psychology advises the old adage, fail to plan, plan to fail, is applicable to successful goal achievement. Low quality planning negatively affects performance in relation to goals. Planning and organizational skills are integral to the goal achievement process. Through proper planning, we can prioritize and maintain focus on the task at hand while avoiding extraneous distractions that can throw us away from our end goal. Preparation should also include assessing our inner stuff that may try to keep us from sticking to our plans. In other words, we need to honestly think about our fears, worries, doubts, and negative self-talk. It can be helpful to make a list to help us be prepared to address the things that may attempt to push us off track. Step 2 is that we need to make a commitment to ourselves. If we are not committed to our goals, goal setting will not work. It is imperative that goals are important and relevant on a personal level, as we've already discussed, and that we know we're capable of attaining, or at the very least, making substantial progress towards the goal. Without the desire to achieve, our attempts at goal setting are doomed to fail. Motivation to achieve a goal encourages us to develop new techniques and skills in order to succeed. In more challenging circumstances, the motivation to keep going is a powerful contributor to goal attainment. Making an internal commitment to yourself and framing that commitment as an act of self-compassion and self-care is of large importance here. Step 3 is to step aside. To make significant changes in our life often requires being mindful of getting out of our own way. One common way in which we may hinder our own growth is by failing to treat ourselves with kindness, compassion, care, empathy, and understanding. Increasing our ability to be nice to ourselves and to cheer ourselves on is essential to making and sustaining positive life changes. I did a full webinar on boosting self-compassion and self-care earlier in this series, so I won't go into detail here, but what it comes down to in the simplest sense is treat yourself like you would a dear friend. Negative self-talk is another major roadblock that often arises when we're trying to make life changes. If we fail to meet a daily intention or we're not making progress as quickly as we'd like, our inner dialogue often turns rather vicious. Increasing our awareness of times when we are internally speaking to ourselves in an unkind way, pausing to acknowledge it, and then reframing our thoughts from a positive vantage point is key here. A great place to start is by asking ourselves, do I even have evidence to support this thought? Or perhaps, do I even have evidence to the contrary? These thoughts help us shift to a more realistic lens of looking at ourselves and our past experiences navigating change. Lastly, identifying our personal strengths and can be immensely supportive to the change process. The more we understand and own and celebrate our innate and learned knowledge, skills, and ways of thinking, the better we can leverage them to our benefit, boost our own confidence, and know when we need to enlist the help of others. There are a number of strengths inventories you can access free online. Simply reviewing past successes in accomplishing life goals and parsing out the strengths you use to do so can be equally informative. Step 4 in taking action toward life balance is to enlist support. Making changes isn't easy. Rather than struggling and risking failure, get all the outside help and support you can. You might ask loved ones, friends, colleagues, or seek professional help. You can also seek out virtual support groups or online communities in which other people are working towards similar goals. Having solid social support integrated into our change processes is helpful emotionally and psychologically. It can also be advisable to enlist an accountability partner with whom you meet on a regular basis, ideally weekly. Some of the benefits of working with an accountability partner include helping maintain motivation, a reliable place to receive feedback and ideas, someone to share triumphs and be your cheerleader, and a frequent reminder that you are not alone. Meeting with accountability partner does not need to be time-consuming. You can do a video connection or even just a simple phone call, and even as much as just setting aside 10 or 15 minutes a week can be really helpful to people on both sides of the accountability partnership. The last action step we'll look at in terms of helping us get to our goals and in turn improve the balance of our life is being flexible. Inevitably, at some point, things are not going to go as planned. Having the flexibility to adapt to barriers, the perseverance to sustain our efforts and carry on in the face of adversity is essential to reaching our goals. A key to flexibility in goal pursuit is to ditch all or nothing or black and white thinking. These types of rigid thinking styles are restricting and unforgiving. For instance, if you decide you're going to take a walk every weeknight after dinner, but you miss Tuesday's walk due to a family emergency, with an all or nothing mindset, your reaction might be something along the lines of, well, I said I would walk every day and now I messed it up, so that's it. I failed. Done. Pretty harsh. Maintaining a mindset of flexibility allows for life to get lifey and humans to be humans. It also allows us to extend self-compassion and learn and grow as a result of challenges. So some other helpful things to keep in mind as we are working toward our goals and building a more balanced life. The first is to keep our eyes on the big picture, to think on the macro level. While our plans will help us move toward a more well-rounded lifestyle by taking steps to improve the imbalanced areas of our lives, we need to be sure to maintain focus on the complete picture, not just those specific areas of focus. After all, it's the big picture that living a balanced life is all about, and placing energized attention onto certain facets of life at the expense of other areas is what knocked us out of balance in the first place. We also need to be open to and mindful of reassessing often. None of us can really know how well we are doing with change in our lives unless we are willing to reassess our position often. Don't feel that your intentions are made of concrete. If something feels like it isn't working, be willing to look at a new approach. Make time for yourself every day in a quiet, meditative mindset to relax and check in with yourself in relation to your progress. Also be open to the truth that our priorities shift frequently. If a goal is no longer resonating with you, it might be time to review your needs and values to determine if the goal still warrants priority status. Lastly, praise yourself, don't punish yourself. We all know that we are our own worst critics. As we move through the change process, it's important to reward ourselves for our successes and not to punish ourselves for setbacks. This doesn't mean rewarding ourselves with chocolate or ice cream when we attain a healthy eating goal. Rather, an internal pat on the back. So this is an internal reward process. It's about acknowledging our successes and reveling in the positive emotions that accompany them and extending compassion to ourselves when we have setbacks and reminding ourselves that we can keep moving forward. So what if at this point you're thinking, well, this all sounds great, Katrina, but you've given us a long and in-depth list of to-dos, and it's just not realistic that I can dedicate so much time and effort to this right now. I say fair enough, and never fear. I also have a bare bones plan B for those of you who would rather keep it simple. It goes a little something like this. Aim to organize a daily routine that involves a balance between activities that are 1, done for the purpose of bringing pleasure, 2, give you a sense of achievement, and 3, help you feel close and connected with others. When we are navigating challenges in life, we can lose touch with the things that typically give us pleasure, especially when stress, anxiety, worry, or depression are in play. Plan to do some activities each day that are pleasurable and make you feel joyful. Some examples may include reading a book, watching a comedy, cooking a healthy meal, dancing or singing, connecting with nature, or creating art. We feel good when we've achieved or accomplished something, so it's helpful to include activities each day that give you a sense of achievement. For example, doing housework, completing a work task, gardening, finishing an exercise routine, tackling life admin to-dos like paying bills, or decluttering. In other words, those activities where you can either see a direct result of the energy that you've put out, or activities that have a start and an end. We are also social animals, and we need and naturally crave closeness and connection with other people. With the current health crisis, many of us may be physically isolated or distant from others, so it's important that we consider creative ways to connect in order to reduce our sense of isolation and loneliness. So how can we continue to connect with family and friends and have social time in a virtual way? Some ideas include meeting virtually with video chats such as Skype, Zoom, JoinMe, FaceTime, other online activities that you can do with other people, like gaming or doing scavenger hunts, just kind of getting creative with ways that you can connect. There's also apps now that allow you to watch like Netflix and be able to chat and connect with a group of people who are watching at the same time, so you can have little viewing parties, lots of things out there that you can try. Of course, if you're comfortable in your particular environment, socially distanced outdoor gatherings are an option. Other options include virtual support groups, online neighborhood groups, and again, if you're comfortable in being out and about, exploring ways that you can volunteer in your community is also a great option. Before we move into the final discussion portion of the presentation, I want to share a few final thoughts and tidbits. The first is I'd like to just provide a gentle reminder to ask for help if you're experiencing life balances that are disruptive and causing high levels of stress, worry, anxiety, or other forms of mental or emotional distress. Some people that you can seek help from and talk to include a counselor or a therapist, your doctor, spiritual leader, a crisis helpline. There are many that are specific to certain populations, such as youth, senior citizens, veterans, people struggling with alcohol and drug addiction. And of course, you can also feel free to reach out to us here at Donate Life Northwest. We are always happy to support our community members and to provide any resources that we might have. For a bit of closing wisdom, I would like to visit the work of Malika Chopra, daughter of famed author and alternative medicine advocate Deepak Chopra. Malika is an author, meditation teacher, and motivational speaker in her own right. In her most recent book, titled Living with Intent, she shares her personal roadmap for living with intent. It applies wonderfully to today's focus of identifying core values, personal needs, and the ways in which we can enhance balance in our lives. Malika sagely advises that we do the following to live with intent. First, incubate. Quiet our minds to tap into our deepest intentions and allow ourselves to see where this leads. Next, notice. Become mindful of our thoughts and actions and pay attention to what they tell us about what gives meaning and a sense of purpose to our lives, while looking for signs that can point us toward our truth. Third is to trust, to have confidence in our inner knowing and in the messages the universe sends us, allowing that knowledge to guide us forward. Next is express. Write down our intentions, say them out loud, or share them with others to fully embrace them and help us move ahead in our journeys. Next is nurture. Be gentle with ourselves as we try to find our way. Intention isn't always a straightforward path, and just like life, giving ourselves opportunities to try and fail is often part of and even crucial to the process. Lastly, she advises take action. Once we've identified an intent or even multiple ones, don't sit and wait for it to magically manifest. Instead, take the practical steps that can make each intention become a reality. It may be easiest to choose one intention at first and set short-term goals to help you get started, just like we spoke about earlier in this presentation. I will close us out with encouraging words from Malika as she gently reminds us, embracing small personal changes can be the first step toward creating greater change in the world and humanity at large. I did intend to have a question portion of this presentation. However, I do see that we've run over time. So I thank you all for hanging in, and I apologize that I don't have the time allotted to answer questions. If you do have questions, comments, feedback, or would like to engage in a deeper discussion, please feel free to reach out to me directly. My email address is luko, L-I-U-K-K-O, @ohsu.edu. As I mentioned throughout the presentation, I will send a follow-up email that will include a link to the recording of this session as well as a number of handouts and resources that have been mentioned throughout the webinar. If you are listening to this session as a recording and you would like the handouts, again, feel free to email me and I'll be happy to send those to you. Again, my email address is liukko@ohsu.edu. Don't forget that this webinar was the final in a 4-part series. If you missed any of the previous webinars, recordings are available for all of those. So again, please feel free to reach out if you would like the links to those recordings. For those of you receiving the follow-up email, I will include those recording links in that email. Lastly, please be sure to keep an eye out for additional educational webinars that Donate Life Northwest will be facilitating in the future. Thank you so much for joining us today. Take care, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and be well.